Thanks for being here today. My name is Anna, and today's class is going to be focusing on the pelvis. So I would recommend, if you have blocks, to at least have one of them. We will be using that for sure today. And if you would like a pillow or a blanket for sensitive knees, for like knee down lunges or anything like that, you can go ahead and grab those, and we will get started off on our backs. So coming onto your back, you can have your feet on the floor if that's comfortable, or your legs stretched out long. And just take a moment to soften your shoulders and your neck. And relax your jawline. Just allow yourself the time and the space to arrive on your mat today. Just noticing your breath, noticing your thoughts, and notice how you feel in your body. I'm just taking that in as information, not right or wrong, good or bad. And go ahead and move your hands to the sides of your ribs. Keep your shoulders and your neck relaxed. And as you inhale through your nose, just imagine that you could breathe out into your hands. And as you exhale, start to feel those ribs draw in towards each other. And we're not trying to force that action, just feeling the movement of the ribs with your breath. And just breathing in and out through your nose. Let's just take about 4 more rounds of that breath on your own. Now you can go ahead and release your arms. We're just going to try to maintain that fullness in your breath. Go ahead and grab your block if you've got it. And you can take it on the lowest or this middle height here. I'm actually going to take it on the lowest setting. It's a little bit easier to feel here. And notice your sacrum. So it's going to be the bone at the base of the spine, where the spine merges with your pelvis. And you want to feel that it is level on the block. Just feel kind of a heaviness of the sacrum, and notice that you're not tipped to one side or the other. And now take your fingers and find your front pelvic point. So there are going to be these bones on the front of your pelvis here. And if you have the hands on those bones, think about lightly drawing your fingers together. So you're going to feel a slight contraction of the muscle there, even though the bones are not actually going to move. And now keep that feeling. The tailbone lightly wraps under toward your knees. And then see if you can lift the right knee up over the hip without changing anything in the pelvis. And then we'll set that right foot down. And then left knee comes up. And set it back down. Right knee comes up. And keep going there. And just notice if there is a tendency to start to maybe tip to one side or the other, or to maybe start to arch in your back. See if you can keep the sacrum heavy on the block, so that we're able to isolate this movement within the hip joints and not moving in the pelvis. So the next time your right knee comes up, we're gonna hold it there. Take your left hand onto the front of the right thigh, and now lightly push the hand into the thigh and resist that with the thigh by pulling back into the hand. And now push into your left heel. Keep kind of scooping the tailbone forward toward that left knee. As you push into the left heel, feel your left glute, your left butt, feel it really start to squeeze. And you're pushing down into that heel and squeezing that left glute so much that it almost feels like you're gonna lift up off of the block. For 3, 2, and 1. Nice. Set that right foot down. Left side here. So bring the left knee up over the hip. Right hand comes to the left thigh. Resist the hand into the thigh and respond by pulling the left thigh into the hand. Keep the tailbone slightly wrapping under toward that right knee. Now push into that right heel and squeeze this right glute. You can give that glute a little bit of a cue, a little tactile cue here with your fingers, and really try to get that glute to fire. As you push into the heel, you want to feel that right glute working so it's almost like you were going to lift your hips up off the block. Last 3, 2, and 1. You can set that left foot down. We'll slide the block out to the side here and go ahead and bring your pelvis down to the floor. So bring your hands onto these front pelvic points again, and I want you to think of them as like little handles. So we're going to do some pelvic tilts here. So imagine that you could kind of grab onto those little handles and pull them up toward your face. You're going to feel your lower back come toward the floor and your tailbone kind of scoop under. So this is a posterior pelvic tilt. And then do the opposite. Imagine you can take those pelvic points and move them forward away from you, and you're going to feel your lower back arch a little bit. This is an anterior pelvic tilt. So we're just going to go back and forth there. Posterior tucking under, tucking back, and then anterior bringing it forward. And so just kind of feeling what anterior and posterior feel like so that we can settle and be able to decipher what our neutral feels like. Okay. And then find that place right in the middle so we're not tucked under or tipped forward. Now push into the heels. And for this one, I want you to think slightly about lengthening your tailbone forward toward your knee. So a little bit of that posterior tilt. Push into the heels and lift the hips up for a bridge. You can take this block if you have it, place it in between your thighs. So we're lightly hugging in with the thighs, squeezing that block, keeping the tailbone lightly wrapping forward. And you can take your hands to your glutes, give them a little tap. So this is great, especially if maybe your glutes are not incentivized to work as well as they could be. So just reestablishing that connection to this part of the body so that we can make them work a little bit more effectively. And you can take the hands to those front pelvic points again and lightly push down so you give yourself something for your glutes to push up into. Keep that breath going. Let's take your arms, reach them up toward the ceiling. Flip the fingers back, and we'll take the left hand to the right fingers, pull them back for a little wrist stretch. And we'll switch hands. The right hand pulls the left fingers back, making sure that we don't lose that strength in the glutes and we're not arching in the back. So we really want this bridge to be an action where the hips are working and we're not going into the low back by arching. And let your arms come down to the floor. We're going to slowly tiptoe the spine down. So we go upper back, middle back, and lower back, and finally the sacrum. So you can take that block off to the side. Let's come around into a quadruped or tabletop position. We're going to lower down onto your forearms here. You always have the option to interlace the fingers, but shoulders are going to be right over the elbows. And now imagine, right where you had your fingers on those pelvic points earlier, think about lightly drawing that space together. So you're going to feel kind of this hugging up and in of your belly. Now without changing that, take the right toes back. And notice here, can you get that right glute to squeeze? So you can take your fingers back, give that right glute a little bit of a tap, and see if you can get it to squeeze up into your fingers. You can bring the forearm back down. We're going to try and lift that right leg just a little bit. And notice that as you do that, we're not arching in the back. So we're trying to keep that lift up in the belly, and we're making the hip and that right glute work to lift the leg. And then let's bring the right knee back down. Same thing, second side. Left toes come back. Feel the pelvic points draw together, right? So we're just getting some of the abdominal muscles to work a little bit more there. Squeeze that left glute, right? Really put your brain right into it. Give it that feedback. And then without changing anything in the lower back, lift the left leg. Maybe see if you can feel that left glute a little bit more. And it's totally okay if you don't right away. This stuff, for a lot of people, it takes some time. And then we'll set that left foot down. Bring the left knee back down. One more time here. Right toes go back. Squeeze that right glute. Don't let the lower back arch. Lift that right leg. And then we're just going to do some little pulses here. Thinking about that action coming from the right hip. For 3, 2, and 1. Set the right knee down. Left leg goes back. So before you lift the leg, pelvic points draw in. Squeeze that left glute. Lift the leg, does not have to be a big lift. And we'll pulse there. Nice, last 3, 2, and 1. Set that knee down. And if it feels okay on your knees, you can sit back for a little child's pose there. Toes can always be tucked. Let's come forward again. We're still going to be on our forearms. This is the last thing we'll do here. Bring your right hand behind your head. So we're going to do a little bit of an open the book move. So you can kind of bring your right elbow down toward the floor. And then inhale, open up to the right, pushing the left forearm into the floor. And exhale, come down. Inhale, push the floor away and open up. Let's do 3 more here. And just notice here that we are only moving as far as we can, really from the ribs. And so with the forearms down, it's going to be harder to turn in the pelvis. So we're trying to keep the pelvis pretty stationary, move the rib cage on top of that. Right forearm comes down, left hand behind the head, point the elbow down a bit, inhale, open to the left. 4 more. You can go at your pace. And it does not need to be a big rotation here. Just trying to get some freedom in the ribs. Not feeling the need to look up at the elbow or up at the ceiling. You can keep the neck pretty neutral there. Last one. And then pop up onto your hands here. Fingers spread nice and wide, and the shoulders are right on top of the wrists. I'm going to tuck the toes And lift the knees for downward facing dog. So go ahead and bend your knees a little bit here. We're keeping the ribs held in. And then think about really sending the hip creases up toward the ceiling. And let the head relax. And so even here, we're thinking about not completely tucking the pelvis under or arching the back and letting it come forward. Right, just right there in the middle. Pelvic points kind of drawing in, so you can think about it, and lifting up in the hip creases. Then walk your hands back towards your feet. You can always have the hands up on blocks. Sit the hip creases back. So I really like to have my fingers in my hip creases here, encouraging them to move back, and the knees just bend as a response to what the hips are doing. Spine stays nice and long. Don't jut your chin forward. Take a couple of really deep breaths. Filling up the back and letting it go. Now notice here the length in your spine. Hips are back, spine is long, neck is neutral. Without changing that, rise all the way up to stand. Awesome. All right, we're gonna learn how to walk again here. It's like walking 2.0. We're gonna start by stepping down into the right foot. And you can start here by lifting up onto the left toes. Give this right glute a little bit of a tap, and you really wanna feel this right glute working. So you can hold it here, or try lifting this knee up. And then we'll set the left foot down, firmly step down onto the left foot, squeeze this left glute. Give it that feedback. You can come up onto the right toes, or lift this right leg. So let's do that a couple more times just until we're at the front of the mat. And notice here what the pelvis is doing. Right? So we don't want to be here. It's going to be really hard for the hip to come up if we're already starting in that position. Same thing here. We don't want to be there. We want to be right in the middle. So you can have the hands on those front pelvic points. Draw them in, tailbone lengthen straight down. And then once you're at the front of the mat, just hold it right there and go into our first sequence. Awesome. Okay, so we are gonna come down into a little bit of a forward fold. So you can grab a hold of your blocks if you would like to use them here. Let's take an inhale, bring your arms forward and up. Watch here that we're not coming into this anterior tilt. And then as you exhale, sit back into the hips. Spine is long, hands come down. Step the right foot back, lower the knee and come onto the top of the foot. So we've got this right hip directly over the knee. Take one hand back to your sacrum and one hand to this front pelvic point. So with this pelvic point, think about drawing up. And with this back hand, it's like you're taking your tailbone straight down toward the knee. This right glute, get it on. It's gonna help you open up into the front of this right thigh. Bring both hands down to the floor. Step the left foot back, downward facing dog. Inhale, right leg reaches up. You can have the hands on blocks for this. As you exhale, pull the knee in, push down into the hands, step that right foot forward. You can always give it a little helping hand there. Lower the left knee, come onto the top of the foot. Same thing, knee over the hip, pull up with this left front pelvic point, wrap down with that left glute. Feel that glute on. Maybe feeling a nice little stretch in the front of that left thigh. Bring both hands down, floor or blocks in front of you, and step the left foot next to the right. Sit back in the hips, spine is long. Rise to stand. Inhale, arms come forward and up. Exhale, sit back in the hips. Hands come down, left foot steps back, Lower the knee, but not the toes this time. You're gonna bring the left hand to the back of your skull, right hand to the sacrum. Now think left glute wrapping down, so same as we did before. Lean the head back into the hands and think about pulling those pelvic points back toward your sacrum. So you should feel like pretty compacted and strong here. Both hands come down to the floor. Step the left or the right foot back, downward facing dog. Inhale, left leg reaches up. Exhale, knee comes in, push into the hands, step that left foot as far forward as you can. Right knee will lower, keep the toes tucked. Right hand behind your head, and left hand to the sacrum. So think about leaning like your whole face into that right hand. Front of the pelvis comes back toward the sacrum. Right glute, wrap it down. Both hands come down floor or blocks. Right foot steps up next to the left and rise to stand. Going right into the second sequence. Inhale, arms lift. Exhale, flex at the hips, sit back. Hands come down. So this time we're gonna step the left foot back, lower the knee but not the toes here, and bring both hands behind your head. So same thing that we've done before. Left glute wraps down, front of the left thigh pulls up. Now hold on to that. Keep that left glute wrapping down. I'm gonna take an inhale. Exhale, slight rotation to the right. Inhale, come back through center. Exhale, slight rotation. What I want you to think about is not letting the pelvis tip forward, right? But we're keeping a neutral pelvis, and then we're rotating the rib cage on top of it. So this doesn't look too crazy, but it's actually pretty challenging and it requires a lot of focus. So really think about holding that left glute firm, just rotating from the ribs. Now you can hold that slight rotation. Left hand will land floor or block, modified side plank, right leg comes back behind you. So we'll keep the foot on the floor for now. Left shin, if you can get it, is parallel to the long side of the mat. Hugging this left shoulder down and in. Now same thing with the pelvis. Same things we've done this whole class. Tailbone lightly reaches back toward the right heel. You can think about those pelvic points kind of drawing together in front. Probably feels a little bit more challenging there, but it's going to feel better in the long run. If you want to challenge yourself a little bit, you can try lifting that right leg up. Woo! Getting a little crazy. Last breath. We're going to bring the right hand down, internally rotate your right hip. So the right hip rolls in, right toes face behind you. Right hand lands floor or block, and then left toes face the back of the mat. So I'll give you a second there, kind of catch up. I know that was a big move. Now same thing here. Kind of wrap that right glute down toward the right knee. You can take the left elbow up toward the ceiling, flip the palm away from your face. Hug that right shoulder down away from the ear. 2 more breaths there. Right, just notice you're not letting your butt stick out behind you, wrapping that right glute down. Left hand and left knee lower, tabletop. Spread the fingers nice and wide. Send your hips up, downward facing dog. Hold the ribs in. Send the hip creases up. Right leg reaches up, inhale. And exhale, step that right foot forward. We're coming up into a crescent lunge here. So take your time. You can always widen your feet a little bit. See if you can soften your back knee a tad. And notice what your pelvis is doing here. right? So we don't want to be in one of these. Don't want to be all the way tucked under. Kind of find that place right in the middle and get this left glute on. Right, I've been doing this for a while. My glutes still like to kind of snooze on me a little bit. So I'm always tapping my glutes, right? Give them a little squeeze there. Let them know it's time to work. And then we'll bring the left hand behind your head and the right hand back to your sacrum. So just like we did in our low lunge. Take an inhale breath. Exhale, tiny little rotation. Keep that left glute on. Inhale back through center. Exhale, little rotation. Inhale, center. Exhale, little rotation, keeping the pelvis steady. Now reach your arms straight out in that slight turn. Take a big breath in. As you exhale, warrior two, spin the left heel down, arms come forward and back. So you can play around with your foot positioning here. You can take your feet wider apart. You can play around with where the left toes are pointing there. Feel this left glute on. Light drawing together of those front pelvic points. Take an inhale breath here. Exhale, reverse your warrior up and back. Lift up into that right side waist. Inhale, warrior two. Exhale, side angle, right forearm or palm to the right thigh. Inhale, warrior two. Exhale, reverse. Warrior two. And side angle. Now hold it here. I'm going to bring the left hand down to the floor, spin onto the left toes. You can always have your back knee on the floor here. Squeeze this left glute, give it a little tap. Now without turning in the pelvis, without letting this left glute go, I'm going to rotate the ribs to the right, and you can take that right arm up toward the ceiling. Let that left ear soften toward the shoulder. All right, and just feel what it's like. Use the glutes to use the hips to hold that pelvis steady so that we can start to get maybe some different movement, some different rotation, different feelings in other parts of the body, because now we're not having to overuse the lower back. I'm going to bring the left knee down to the floor, right hand comes down, and step back into your tabletop here. So just like we did on our back, let's do a couple little pelvic tilts here. So anterior tilt, arch the back a little bit, tip the pelvis forward, and then posterior tilt. We're like rounding in the low back and kind of curling the tailbone under. Let's just do a couple more of those, just really small. And then find that place right in the middle. Imagine drawing the pelvic points together. Now without changing that, right, we're lightly hugging the shoulders back and down. We're going to step the right foot back, squeeze that right glute. Really squeeze it there. Still without changing the pelvis, step the left foot back for your plank. Glutes are on, chin is slightly in, and we're in our plank. And it's going to be a lot harder because we are working more in a good way. You can always lower the knees down. Let's actually everyone lower the knees down now. And then still without letting that pelvis go, I'm going to bend the elbows, nice and slow. Bend, bend, don't let the pelvis go. Squeeze the glutes, pelvic points together. Lower all the way down. Woo! I'm sweating. So let's make a little pillow for your forehead here. And I'm going to have the feet about hips width apart. Go ahead and bend your right knee. Now you can, with your fingers, find that front pelvic point here and think about pushing that down into the floor. So pelvic point pushes down into the floor. We're not arching the back. So lightly wrap the tailbone back toward your feet. See if you can get that right glute to squeeze before we even do much. Squeeze that right glute. Squeeze it, tailbone wraps back. Pelvic point pushing into the floor. And then maybe we hover that right leg from the glute, from the hip, and set it down. And then hover that right glute on the right thigh and set it down. Let's do 3 more of those. Notice if you start to arch in your back or if you start to shift over to the left side. Just take a moment, recalibrate. Really put your focus into that right glute. This is my weaker side, so I have to send it a little bit of extra inspiration. Maybe that was 3. Maybe we're doing 4. And then we'll set that right leg down, lower it all the way back down. You can maybe give your hips a little shake there. I'm going to plant the hands right next to your chest here, under your shoulders, and then think about almost like screwing your hands into the floor. Lengthen the tailbone back slightly, feel the glutes on, and then drag the hands back. Lift up for a little baby cobra. If anyone tells you to relax or soften your glutes in a back bend, do not listen. We need our glutes and we need them to be strong to extend the hips and the spine. And we'll lower back down. Tuck the toes, can stay down on your knees. We're gonna lift back up into a plank and come into a downward facing dog. Take a couple of breaths there. And then as you're ready, you can walk your feet forward to your hands and we'll rise all the way up to stand. Okay, we're gonna do that whole thing on the left side. Take an inhale, bring your arms forward and up. Exhale, sit back into the hips. Right foot will step back. Lower the knee, but not the toes this time. And set up the pelvis, right glute wraps down, front of the right thigh lifts up, hands go behind your head. So we're holding the pelvis perfectly steady. Take an inhale breath. Exhale, rotate a little to the left just from the ribs. Inhale back through center. Exhale, little rotation. Keep going, you've got 3 more of those. We're leaning the back of the head into the hands, keeping the chin down. Keeping that right glute steady. Keep it active to help stabilize your pelvis here. Now hold your little rotation. Reach your arms straight out from that. Right hand will land. And then we're gonna try and keep this right shin parallel. You can play around with that. And the left foot reaches back behind you here. So notice we're not letting the butt stick out here. Lengthen the tailbone toward the left heel and imagine drawing those front pelvic points together in front. Maybe you take the left arm up. Keep hugging this right shoulder blade in. Maybe we try hovering the back leg. Really keep this right glute working. It's almost like it's resisting into the front of that right hip. And then we're gonna bring the left hand down, internally rotate your left thigh so it rolls in, your toes point behind you, and then open your right toes to face the back of the mat. You with me? Same thing here, left glute, kind of wrap it underneath you. You can pick that right elbow up, maybe face the palm away. Learned this move from Laura Hyman. I think she calls it stargazer. Couple of deep breaths here. Keep hugging that left shoulder blade down away from your ear. We'll bring the right hand and the right knee down tabletop. Spread the fingers nice and wide and lift up downward facing dog. Holding those ribs in. Left leg reaches up, inhale. Exhale, pull the knee in, push the hands away from you, step the foot forward, and we'll rise up. So take a moment, set yourself up. You can always take the feet a little bit wider. And just play around with your pelvis here. So try to soften your back knee a little bit and just find your neutral pelvis, right? We definitely don't want to be here. If we're tipping forward, that's actually going to drive down into your knee even more. We want that neutral pelvis, right glute, really squeeze it. Come on, Betty. So never wants to do anything. And then we'll have the right hand behind your head, left hand to the sacrum. Inhale, breath there. Exhale, slight rotation without changing your pelvis. Inhale to center. Exhale, slight rotation. Inhale. Exhale. Let's do one more here. Inhale. Exhale. Hold it here. And then we'll bring the arms straight out here. Actually, think we did this in the low lunge when I meant to do it here. Take an inhale breath. And then as you exhale, windmill open, right heel spins down, and arms come forward and back. Play around if you need to widen the feet, if you need to play around with the angle of the back foot, make it work for your body. You can think light drawing in of those pelvic points. Inhale here. Exhale, reverse. Inhale, warrior two. Exhale, side angle, palm or forearm to that left thigh. Warrior two. Reverse, lift up into that left side waist. Warrior two. And side angle, lift up into the right waist. Right hand comes down to the floor, spin onto your back toes. You can always have your hand on a block here. Check in with this right glute. Really put your focus into it, squeeze it. Holding the pelvis level here, rotate the ribs open to the left, and maybe the left arm reaches up. Just let your head relax. Lean into the support of that right shoulder blade on the back of the shoulder. And then we'll bring the left hand, the knees down, so we're in tabletop here. Spread the fingers nice and wide, shoulders on top of the wrists. Now we're going to come right into that neutral pelvis, not tipped forward or back. Throat is lifting up, so your neck is staying in line. Shoulder blades hug back. Pull those pelvic points together. Left foot steps back, squeeze the glute. Don't change the pelvis. Right foot steps back, squeeze that glute. Pelvic points, hold them in. Neck is in line. Lower the knees. Don't change anything here. This is where it gets really tricky and we really have to focus. Bend the elbows. Slow, slow, slow. Don't let go of those glutes. All the way down to the floor. Woo. So, left side here. Make a little pillow for your forehead. Legs are about hips width apart. Bend your left knee. And then push into that left pelvic point. Like push it into the floor. Lengthen the tailbone back slightly. And first just focus on squeezing that left glute. So you can kind of squeeze, release, reach back, give it a little rub. And then we're going to see, can we lift that left thigh from the glute, from the hip, and set it down. And if you're not there yet, no big deal. Just see if you can focus on getting that glute to turn on and release. Let's just do 3 more here. This is going to be a small movement, but you really want to focus on feeling this in the glute and not in your lower back. And then let that leg come down. Wiggle your hips a little bit. You can bend the knees, windshield wiper side to side. And the good news is we don't have to push back into a plank this time. So you can let your legs come down and we'll just roll over onto your back. Take your feet about mats width apart. Just feel your neutral pelvis here. Just lightly drawing in the front. And then windshield wiper your knees, just in a really small movement side to side. And feel that as you do that, you can think about moving just in the hip joints and not letting the whole pelvis move with you. Just letting your shoulders and your neck relax. Maybe closing your eyes. And as you're ready, you can come into your version of Shavasana. So if you'd prefer to have the knees bent with the feet on the floor, you can do that, or stretch the legs out long. You could put some support behind your knees or behind your head. But just set yourself up in a way that makes you feel comfortable. And taking your time to get there. Just letting yourself settle into this time where you can let go of the focus and the work. You can just let your body be where it is. Just let your breath be soft and easy. Let your next breath be a little bit deeper. And your exhale a little slower. Just taking your time to start to wiggle your fingers and your toes. Maybe reaching your arms overhead. And as you're ready, rolling on over to your side. And taking a moment or two there. And eventually we'll meet back in a comfortable seat. And you can sit up on something if it feels better for your hips and spine. And just feel, even there, maybe a little bit of a difference in your pelvis and a difference in how you observe it, feel in it. And just noticing that as we begin to spend more focus and we become more aware and we pay more attention in our yoga practice and in our bodies and the ways that we sit and stand and move throughout our lives, how that translates just in our ability to be conscious and aware and to notice things outside of our yoga practice. Just take a moment, feel that, absorb it, so that we can take it out into our lives. Thank you so much for being here today. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please like it, share it, subscribe so that you will not be missing classes that I post, and I will see you again next time. Thanks. Enjoy your day.